It was 6:47 a.m. when I saw the text from my mother. We're meeting with the realtor this Saturday. Keep the place clean. That's how I found out my own parents were planning to sell my house behind my back. Not ask. Not suggest. Inform. My name is Emily Dawson. I'm 36, a top-performing real estate agent in Colorado, and the country cottage my grandmother left me was more than a house. It was my anchor, the only place I felt truly seen and safe. I stood frozen in my apartment kitchen phone, still in hand, as the pieces clicked together. My sister Layla was pregnant. My parents were thrilled. But somehow that joy had morphed into entitlement, a belief that they could hand over my inheritance, my sanctuary, like it was a family timeshare. They hadn't even called to discuss it. I stared out at the city skyline, heart pounding. I had poured 5 years of sweat and savings into that house. And now they were moving forward as if I didn't exist. That morning, I made a decision I never thought I'd have to make. I was going to sell the house before they could, and they would never see it coming. The weekend after that text, I drove to the cottage with a lump in my throat and fire in my chest. It was early spring, the apple blossoms barely budding, and for the first time since inheriting the place, the drive felt heavy. The gravel crunched under my tires as I pulled into the driveway of the cedar-shingled cottage. The garden beds I'd replanted from my grandmother's saved seeds were just starting to bloom. I stood on the porch and inhaled the familiar scent of pine and old wood, trying to steady myself. Inside, everything was just as I left it. My grandmother's quilt draped over the rocking chair, her handwritten recipes pinned to the fridge, the sun filtering through the kitchen window, the same way it had since I was 8. It wasn't just a house. It was my history. As I moved room to room, a chilling realization hit me my family hadn't asked because they didn't see me. Not really. They saw me as a resource, a reliable fallback, the responsible one who would make way when needed. I remembered the last Sunday dinner when Layla had announced her pregnancy. My mother had gasped and clapped. My father smiled proudly. And I, standing at the edge of the table, offered polite congratulations. But I also noticed the glance my mother gave my father afterward. That unspoken look. I had brushed it off then, but now I understood. The plan had been forming even before I knew it. The betrayal wasn't just about real estate. It was about being treated like a background character in a story where Layla was always the star. She had floated through life with half-hearted jobs, stringing boyfriends, and lofty dreams she never followed through on. Meanwhile, I was putting in 60-hour weeks, closing multi-million-dollar deals, and driving 4 hours round-trip every weekend just to restore a home I loved. Layla didn't even like the country. She once called the house quaint, in a little house on the prairie sort of way. But now, with a baby on the way, and her boyfriend barely holding down a steady gig, suddenly the house I had nurtured became the perfect place for a new start. I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat at the old stone fireplace and read Grandma June's letter again. Emily, this house is yours because you understand it. You've listened to its stories and I trust you'll protect them. That sentence hit harder now. She had known. Somehow, she had sensed that this gift would come with pressure, that people might try to take it, and she trusted me to say no. But saying no wouldn't be enough. My family had already contacted a realtor. My mother had dropped it in the text, like it was a done deal. We're meeting the realtor this Saturday. Who was we? Certainly not me, the actual owner. That smug certainty lit a fuse in me. They weren't just assuming I'd comply. They were counting on it. That's when the idea hit. I was a licensed realtor. A damn good one. I had contacts, resources, marketing tools, everything I needed. If anyone was going to sell that house, it was going to be me, on my terms. And if I did it quickly and quietly, they'd have no way to interfere. The moment the plan took shape, I felt something shift. Not fear, not guilt, power. For once, I wasn't playing the passive daughter role. I was going to take action, not in anger, but in precision. Back in the city, I moved fast. I called Darren, the broker who mentored me. I told him I needed to list a property under my name discreetly, and I needed it done right. Darren didn't ask questions, just gave me his full support. We set up photo shoot staging and private listings restricted to serious buyers only. No public showings. No family snooping. On Wednesday, I drove back with a photographer and stager. Every pillow was fluffed, every curtain drawn just right to let in the morning light. I wrote the listing myself, highlighting every unique feature of the house that made it special, not just valuable. It wasn't about maximizing price. It was about choosing who would live there next. I priced it slightly under market to attract quick attention, but still high enough to honor its worth. By Friday morning, we had our first showing scheduled. That night, I sat alone on my apartment balcony, staring at the skyline while texts from my mom lit up my phone. Can we come see the house? Sunday, the realtor wants to take measurements. I didn't respond. I couldn't not without giving everything away. They didn't know that by Sunday I'd already have multiple offers in hand. They didn't know the house they thought they could claim had already been removed from their grasp. Saturday morning arrived with a nervous flutter in my stomach. I drove out to the country house hours before the first showing. The air was crisp, the lawn freshly mowed, and the scent of early blossoms lingered in the breeze. I walked through the rooms one final time, wiping surfaces, straightening frames, and ensuring everything reflected care, not just cleanliness. I wasn't just selling a house, I was releasing a chapter of my life. The showings began right at noon. The first couple liked the layout, but wanted something closer to town. The second adored the space, but felt unsure about the age of the property. The third, an older couple from Denver, lingered longer. They marveled at the apple trees and the wraparound porch, but their eyes betrayed hesitation about the upkeep. Then came the fourth appointment. A man named Gabriel Jackson, tall mid-40s, with an energy that was calm and deliberate. The kind of man who didn't just see property, he felt it. He stepped inside, paused, and looked around with quiet appreciation. "This place has soul," he said almost to himself. As we walked through the house, he asked about the wood beams, the stone fireplace, the kitchen renovations. When we reached the converted garage studio, he grew quiet, running his hand along the window ledge. "My late wife was a painter," he said softly. "She always wanted a space like this." Something in his voice stopped me. I looked at him, really looked, and saw a man not trying to make a deal, but searching for a piece of peace. He asked if we could sit on the porch for a few minutes. I agreed. We sat in silence for a while, watching the trees sway gently in the afternoon sun. "This house means a lot to you, doesn't it?" he asked. I nodded, unsure how much to reveal. But then, the words spilled out. I told him about Grandma June, about the summers spent baking pies, playing cards by the fireplace, and how the house had become more of a lifeline than a luxury. I didn't mention the family drama, but I didn't have to. "I can tell you've poured love into this place," he said. "If I buy it, I want you to know I'll treat it with the same respect." When he left, I felt something strange hope, maybe. A hope that someone else could cherish this house as deeply as I had. That night, I received a call from his agent. A full-price offer cash with a quick but flexible closing. I accepted. And just like that, it was done. The next 2 weeks were a blur of paperwork and silent maneuvering. I packed the personal items that mattered most: my grandmother's recipe cards, the quilt she made me in high school, a photo of us on the porch. I told my family I was swamped with a huge listing, which was technically true. But on the inside, I was bracing for a storm. And then it hit. 1 week after the house closed, I was eating breakfast on my balcony when my phone rang. My father's name flashed across the screen. I hesitated, then picked up. "Emily, thank God," he said. "There's a man in your house. He's threatening to call the police." "What are you talking about?" I asked, my blood running cold. We went to the house with Layla to take some measurements for the nursery. I used the key we still had, and there's a man inside claiming we're trespassing. Everything in me went still. "You need to get out there now," he said. "This man says he's the owner. You have to fix this." I hung up without replying, grabbed my keys, and drove like hell. When I pulled into the driveway, it was chaos. A police cruiser sat behind my parents' SUV. My mother was sitting on the porch steps, pale and shaken. My father was gesturing wildly to a calm-looking officer. Layla was crying in the car, visibly pregnant and furious. And Gabriel, standing tall, composed near the front door, his arms crossed, but his expression unreadable. My father spotted me first. "Emily, tell them this is your house. Tell them you gave us permission." I walked slowly toward them, the weight of everything pressing on my chest. "This isn't my house anymore," I said, my voice steady. "I sold it. Gabriel Jackson is the legal owner now." Silence. My mother's mouth opened, then closed. My father's face turned from relief to confusion to rage. "What do you mean you sold it?" "I mean exactly that," I said. 2 weeks ago. It's done. Recorded. Final. You didn't even tell us," my mother hissed. "You knew we needed it for Layla." "No," I said firmly. "You decided she needed it. You never asked. You just assumed." The officer interjected gently. "Ma'am, were you aware that you no longer had permission to be on the property?" "We have a key," my father snapped. "You weren't invited," Gabriel said calmly. "That makes it trespassing." "Mr. Jackson has chosen not to press charges," the officer said, "but I'd advise you not to return here without written permission." The ride home was silent. Layla didn't speak to me. My father muttered something about betrayal. My mother cried softly, accusing me of tearing the family apart. But inside, I felt nothing but clarity. They had finally seen me not as the compliant daughter, but as someone capable of making choices. And I had made the right one. After the confrontation, I expected silence. What I got was war. The calls started that same evening. My mother's tearful voicemails accused me of betrayal. "We were counting on you, Emily," she sniffled. "You knew how much that house meant to Layla now. How could you be so cold?" My father's messages were sharper, framed in disappointment, cloaked in shame. "Family doesn't do this to each other," one message said. "You'll regret this. Layla." She didn't bother with calls. She blocked me on everything and posted a cryptic Instagram story. Some people only show their true colors when it's too late. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because if I opened that door again, I wasn't sure I'd have the strength to keep it from swinging back to where it had always been me, sacrificing them, taking. At work, I kept my head down, pouring my energy into clients and closings. But behind the professionalism was exhaustion. The emotional toll of standing up for myself for the first time ever was heavier than I'd expected. Even though I knew I was right, the guilt still creeped in during quiet moments. Was I cruel for not compromising? Was I heartless for choosing bricks and wood over blood? But then, I'd remember the facts. I paid every tax, repair, and maintenance bill on that house. They planned to sell it without even consulting me. They thought their desires overrode my rights. No, I wasn't cruel. I was just done being a doormat. What shifted my mindset completely was a message from someone I didn't expect Tyler Layla's boyfriend. It came about 3 weeks after the confrontation. A simple text. "Can we talk just us? I think you deserve to know the full picture." Curious, and frankly a little wary, I agreed to meet him at a quiet coffee shop downtown. Tyler looked tired. His hoodie wrinkled, his expression guarded. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, avoiding eye contact at first. "Look, Layla doesn't know I'm doing this. She'd lose it if she did." "I appreciate the honesty," I replied. He let out a breath. "I need to say, I'm sorry. About everything." I stayed silent, letting him talk. "I never wanted your house. I told Layla that from the beginning. Yeah, it's beautiful, but I didn't feel right taking something that wasn't offered. I figured we'd save up and get our own place. Small, but ours." "Then why?" I started. She kept saying your parents promised it, that they had it all figured out, that it wasn't really yours. It was a family home. Honestly, I thought they had worked something out with you. I blinked, the pieces falling into place. The entitlement wasn't just from Layla. It had been encouraged by my parents. "They didn't," I said flatly. "They never asked. They just planned." He nodded. "I see that now. I just wanted you to know I've been saving for a down payment. I have a good job, decent credit. I didn't want a handout." I believed him, and it rocked me. All this time, I'd assumed Tyler was in on the scheme, just another taker. But he had been trying to build something real, and been steamrolled by my family's manipulations, too. It changed everything, not because it excused what had happened, but because it showed how deep the dysfunction ran. Even outsiders were being pulled into the orbit of my parents' entitlement. Later that week, I dug deeper. Using my real estate connections, I pulled records on my parents' financial history, and what I found floored me. 6 months earlier, they had refinanced their home, pulling out equity. Not a small amount either. Enough to easily help Layla with a down payment. They had the means. They just didn't want to spend their own money. They wanted to look generous. On my dime. That night, I sat on my new condo's balcony laptop, closed, wine in hand, staring at the city skyline. I thought of all the years I had deferred, delayed, and downsized my own dreams to help out. The loans I never got repaid. The birthdays that were just another day because Layla was having a crisis. The Sunday dinners where I was invisible until needed. And I realized something startling. I had trained them to treat me this way, by always saying yes, always smoothing things over, always being the peacekeeper. I had taught them that I didn't have limits, but now I did, and it was changing everything. By the time summer arrived, I had stopped expecting my phone to buzz with apologies. The family group chat had gone silent. Sunday dinners were a memory. Layla still hadn't unblocked me. And yet the silence wasn't empty. It was space. Space to think. Space to heal. Space to rebuild a life where my voice mattered. That's when I decided to make a move, literally and financially. With part of the proceeds from the house sale, I worked with a trusted financial advisor to set up a robust investment portfolio. I wasn't about to blow the money on something flashy or temporary. I wanted stability legacy, something Grandma June would have been proud of. Then I started hunting for a new place of my own. Not another farmhouse, nothing could replace that. But something that felt peaceful, intentional. After weeks of searching, I found a top-floor condo just outside the city. It had a wraparound balcony, hardwood floors, and just enough space to feel like mine. Most importantly, it had a west-facing window for sunsets and a tiny garden corner where I could grow heirloom tomatoes in containers, something my grandmother used to do when she couldn't bend down anymore. Moving in was bittersweet. I missed the smell of pine and the creak of the old staircase. But there was relief, too, a feeling of choice. This wasn't something handed to me or forced on me. It was something I had earned, selected, claimed. 2 weeks after I moved, I got a message from Gabriel. Gabriel Jackson. "Thought you might like to see this. First bloom in your grandma's garden. She's thriving." Attached was a photo of the cottage's front yard, where the peonies had erupted into color pink, red, white. I stared at it for a long time. My heart ached, yes, but it also felt warm. He didn't have to send that. He was just a kind man honoring what the home meant to me. I replied simply, "Thank you. That means more than you know." The next day, something unexpected arrived, a birth announcement. Not from Layla, from Tyler. It was a text short, and to the point, Lily Grace, born last night. Healthy and strong. Thought you should know you're an aunt. Attached was a photo of a tiny baby wrapped in a pale pink blanket, her eyes still puffy, her hair a soft, dark swirl. I stared at her for what felt like hours. This child had nothing to do with the chaos. She hadn't asked for any of it. And despite everything, she was my niece. That night, I sat down with my financial advisor and made a decision. I created a trust fund for Lily's future college expenses, modest, but meaningful and structured, so that only she could access it when the time came. I didn't tell Layla. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because this was the kind of legacy Grandma June believed in. I also sent a small gift, a soft blanket nearly identical to the one my grandmother had made me at birth. I ordered it from a small quilt shop upstate, embroidered with Lily's name in the corner. Tyler texted back within the hour. "Thank you." That was incredibly thoughtful. Layla's not ready to say it, but I am. We both know you didn't have to do any of this. It means a lot. A week later, my phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice was different, quieter, older. "Emily," she said, "Tyler told us about the trust fund." I stayed silent. "That was very generous of you." "She's my niece," I said. "She deserves a future that isn't tangled in all this." There was a pause. "Maybe we didn't handle things right," she said carefully. "We thought we were doing what was best for the family. But I guess we never asked what you thought." That wasn't quite an apology, but it was a crack in the wall. She continued, "We'd like to invite you to dinner this weekend. Just us. To meet Lily." My breath caught. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I was sure about one thing: the story wasn't over. That Saturday, I found myself standing outside my parents' house for the first time in months. I hesitated at the front steps. The hydrangeas in the flower beds were overgrown. The porch swing creaked softly in the breeze. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. The door opened before I could knock. My mother stood there wiping her hands on a dish towel, her face lit up with a cautious smile. "Hi, sweetheart." I nodded. "Hi." She stepped aside and I walked in. The dining room was familiar. Same old oak table, same lace doilies, same scent of rosemary chicken. But the atmosphere was different, quieter, tentative. My father sat stiffly at the head of the table, and Layla was on the couch in the living room holding Lily, the baby. That was the anchor in all of this. "Do you want to hold her?" Layla asked, not looking up. I nodded and walked over. She placed the baby carefully in my arms. Lily was warm, soft, and impossibly tiny. Her eyes blinked sleepily, unaware of the invisible war lines in the room around her. "She looks like you," I said. Layla snorted softly. "She has your chin." "Unfortunately." We both chuckled. It was the first real moment of connection we'd had in nearly a year. Dinner was awkward but civil. My father made small talk about work. My mother kept offering seconds. No one mentioned the house. Not until dessert. The college fund was a big gesture, my dad said, cutting into his slice of pie. I sipped my tea. It wasn't a gesture. It was a decision. He nodded, avoiding eye contact. "We're helping Layla and Tyler with a down payment now. Something they can manage on their own." "That's good," I said. "That's how it should have been." He looked up then. "You were right. We overstepped. It's hard to admit, but we did." It wasn't a speech, but it was enough. After dinner, Layla and I sat on the porch while Lily slept on her chest. The air was cooler now, dusk falling fast. "I was angry," she said quietly. "I thought you chose a house over me." I shook my head. It wasn't about choosing a house. It was about being heard, about being respected. She nodded slowly. Mom and Dad made it sound like the house was communal, that you were just being difficult. But I get it now. I wouldn't want anyone trying to take what's mine either. We sat in silence for a bit. I'm sorry, she said finally. Not for wanting a home, but for assuming I was entitled to yours. It hit me then. This wasn't just about a house. It was about every time I had swallowed my needs to keep peace. Every time I was told to be the bigger person. Every time I was praised for being dependable while my sister was consoled for falling apart. You know, I said Grandma used to say, don't let anyone take advantage of your kind heart. Not even family. Layla smiled. She was a smart woman, and I realized in that moment that I hadn't just protected my grandmother's legacy, I had become it. In the months that followed, our family started to reconfigure itself slowly, cautiously, but genuinely. Sunday dinners rotated between my condo and Layla's new apartment. My father still bristled at boundaries, but respected them more. My mother no longer assumed I'd drop everything when Layla needed help. Layla asked before making assumptions. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And Gabriel. He sent photos every season, Lily playing in the apple orchard during fall, the porch dusted with snow in winter. He even invited me out once a year to sit on the rocking chair just for old times' sake. I accepted. One day, watching Lily toddle across Layla's living room, I felt something shift. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't guarding myself against betrayal. I was just living and being seen. And that more than anything was what I had wanted all along. A year later, I stood at the edge of a crowded park, watching Lily toddle through the grass with Layla close behind. The sun filtered through the trees, laughter floated in the air, and I felt, finally, peace. A lot had changed. Our family still carried scars, but there was healing too. Layla had grown into motherhood more gracefully than I expected. She still had her moments of drama, sure, but there was a new depth to her, a maturity that came from sleepless nights and unconditional love. My parents had softened as well. They still had opinions, plenty of them, but they no longer assumed I'd bend every time. They asked now. They listened more. They offered rather than demanded. And me, I had found a rhythm I never thought possible. I still worked in real estate, but I was more selective about the clients I took on. I invested in things that mattered: my health, my home, my future. I'd even taken up painting again, just like Grandma June. I wasn't half as talented as she'd been, but there was something meditative about brushing color onto canvas in my tiny balcony garden. One evening, I got a call from Gabriel. He was holding a fall arts fundraiser at the cottage, now known as the June Dawson Retreat Center for Creative Healing. He had turned the converted studio into a community space for artists who had lost someone or something. It just felt like the right way to honor what that home meant, he said. When I visited that weekend, I stood in the middle of the studio with tears in my eyes. Paintings lined the walls, some abstract, some heartbreakingly personal. In one corner, a woman was sketching with a look of pure focus. In another, a man read poetry aloud to an empty chair. "This place is helping people," Gabriel said. "It always did," I replied. Before I left, he handed me an envelope. Inside was a photo of Grandma June sitting on the porch, taken decades ago, her hands wrapped around a coffee mug, a small smile on her face. "I found it tucked inside an old book," he said. "Thought you should have it." I framed it and hung it in my condo right above my desk, a daily reminder of who she was and who I had become. Because what I learned, what I lived, was this: boundaries are not the opposite of love. They are its foundation. Standing up for yourself doesn't mean abandoning family. It means honoring both their humanity and your own. Real relationships are built on mutual respect, not guilt or obligation. And legacy, it's not about inheritance. It's about intention. Grandma June didn't leave me the house just because I loved it. She left it to me because she knew I'd protect what it stood for and pass it on in my own way. That's exactly what I did. And somehow, through all the conflict and distance, that decision made room for something new, something more honest. My family's story didn't end in bitterness. It shifted painfully at times into something deeper recognition and eventually reconciliation. One afternoon, I found Layla sitting in my garden, watching Lily water the tomato plants. She loves it here, she said. I smiled. So did I. She turned to me. You've changed. I had to, I said. For all of us. No, she said. For you. And that's why it worked. If there's one lesson I learned from this experience, it's that family love should never come at the cost of self-respect. For most of my life, I confused being the good daughter with being silent, agreeable, and self-sacrificing. I thought that keeping the peace meant suppressing my own voice. But peace built on quiet resentment isn't peace, it's erosion. When anyone tries to redefine your boundaries for their own convenience, that's not love. That's control. And control wrapped in guilt is the most dangerous kind of manipulation, especially when it's coming from the people you love most. Saying no to my family wasn't easy. It was painful, lonely at times, but it was also necessary. Because what I gained wasn't just distance from drama, I gained clarity, confidence, and a sense of ownership over my own life. The relationships that survived did so on new terms, terms of mutual respect. And the ones that didn't, maybe they never truly saw me in the first place. You might never face a situation exactly like mine, but chances are you've felt the pressure of expectations from people you love. If you're constantly sacrificing your boundaries to keep others comfortable, it's time to ask, at what cost? Setting boundaries isn't an act of rebellion, it's an act of self-respect. Whether it's saying no to an unfair ask, choosing to protect your time, or reclaiming what's yours, you're allowed to prioritize your well-being. You don't need anyone's permission to honor your values. And if someone walks away because of that, they weren't standing with you, they were standing on you. If this story resonated with you, hit the like button, subscribe for more powerful real-life stories, and share your experience in the comments. Have you ever had to set a boundary with family? How did it change your life?